Hello everyone, and today, I will tell you about the movie In Time. Will Solace lives in a world where people cease to age. The human body has been genetically modified at the genetic level to develop until the age of 25 and then remain frozen. However, to maintain their youthful bodies, people must pay with time. Embedded in the forearm of every person from birth is a clock that displays the amount of time they have left to live in hours, minutes, or seconds. The countdown begins at 25 years old, activating the clock and leaving them with just 1 year. In Will's world, time has become the currency. Each day, Will earns a specific amount of time in the time zone where he resides through his labor. Typically, people in Will's world have very limited time, often with no more than a day displayed on their clocks. Will Solace resides in the poverty-stricken ghetto with his mother and works at a factory that produces devices used to transfer time. His father died when he was 5 years old, killed for distributing time to the residents of their district. Despite living in the deprived neighborhood, it's his mother's birthday today, so he presents her with a bottle of champagne before heading to work. After work, he meets up with his friend and drinking companion Borrell at a bar. While there, he notices Henry Hamilton, a wealthy man with over a century on his clock, freely giving away his time to others. Will observes local thieves known as timekeepers taking an interest in Henry. These timekeepers forcefully steal time from people. Will attempts to intervene and save Henry from the timekeepers but fails. Fortis, along with his gang, arrives at the bar, prompting Henry to seek refuge in the restroom. Will manages to drag Henry away from the dangerous situation, and they find shelter in an abandoned building on the factory premises, evading the timekeepers. During their conversation, Will discovers that Henry is wearied by eternal life and contemplates ending his existence by donating all his time to someone else. Will and Henry decide to spend the night at the factory, where Henry transfers almost all his time to Will before departing to witness the sunrise on a bridge. As Henry's time expires, he tragically passes away, despite Will's attempts to save him. Having gained over a century of life, Will visits Borrell to share the events and gifts him 10 years of his newfound time. Borrell promptly heads to the bar. Meanwhile, Will's mother finishes her work shift and boards the bus. However, the fare is increased to 2 hours, while she only possesses 1.5 hours on her clock. The bus driver refuses to provide credit, suggesting that she run home to save time. Will meets his mother at the bus stop, but she fails to arrive on the bus. Desperate, Will races to meet her, but he is unable to transfer his time to her before she tragically passes away in his arms. The timekeepers recover Henry's lifeless body from the water, led by Raymond Leon, who has served in the police force for over 50 years and was acquainted with Will's father. Raymond quickly deduces that Henry was a victim of robbery, and they decide to search surveillance camera records for the culprit. Determined to seek justice and dismantle the corrupt system, Will plans to infiltrate the affluent time zone, where he discovers that the wealthy possess vast amounts of time on their accounts, enough to sustain them for a lifetime. Will takes up residence in a luxurious hotel, utilizing a portion of the time Henry gave him upon arrival. During a lunch outing, Sylvia Voice, the daughter of time magnate Philippe Weiss, takes notice of Will, intrigued by his distinctive appearance that sets him apart from the steel-clad elites. Will, who was once skilled at poker, decides to visit a casino and manages to win a substantial sum from Philippe Weiss in a high-stakes game. Following the game, Philippe introduces Will to his daughter, Sylvia. With the time he won, Will purchases a sports convertible and takes Sylvia to the Weiss mansion. At the mansion, Will is introduced to the entire family, but his focus remains on Sylvia. She confides in him about the burdens of living in this world, constantly surrounded by security, longing for freedom and adventure. Without hesitation, Will suggests they indulge in a daring escapade by skinny dipping in the ocean. However, their carefree moment is interrupted by the arrival of timekeepers who arrest Will, stripping him of all his time, leaving him with just a few hours to spare for bureaucratic paperwork. The authorities refuse to believe that Henry Hamilton willingly gave his time to Will. In a desperate attempt to escape, Will takes Sylvia hostage, and they elude Raymond's pursuit. As they make their way back to Will's district, an unfortunate accident leaves Will and Sylvia unconscious. Just as Fortis and his gang approach, police sirens wail in the distance, causing Fortis to flee. Upon regaining consciousness, Will and Sylvie find themselves running out of time. They desperately try to fill it by seeking solace with Borel, only to discover that he drank himself to death at the bar. Overwhelmed by grief and blaming Will for her husband's demise, Borel's wife pushes him away. In a desperate attempt to buy more time, Will decides to pawn Sylvie's earrings, earning them a couple of extra days. Pressing a gun against her, he forces Sylvie to call her father and demand that Philip donate 1,000 years to a charitable organization by the next morning. He promises to release Sylvie once the transfer is completed. As they await the transfer, Will and Sylvie seek refuge in his apartment, engaging in heartfelt conversations that draw them closer together. Morning arrives, but the anticipated funds from the charity never materialize. Will convinces Sylvie to call her father, hoping he will rescue her from the ghetto. However, Raymond, who traced their previous call, unexpectedly appears and points his gun at Will. Witnessing the danger, Sylvie instinctively fires her weapon at the timekeeper, intending to frighten him but accidentally hitting him in the shoulder. In an act of selflessness, Will shares his own time with Raymond, enabling him to reach safety. Seizing the opportunity, Will steals Raymond's car with Sylvie, and together they embark on a hasty escape. On their journey, they intercept a wealthy woman's car on the highway and proceed to rob her. The media soon broadcast their images, branding Will and Sylvie as fugitives acting in concert. Determined to survive, Will teaches Sylvie how to handle a gun, preparing her for the challenges they will face. In a daring move, they successfully raid a time bank, redistributing their stolen time to the destitute residents of the ghetto. Relentlessly pursued by the timekeepers, Will and Sylvie find temporary refuge in a shabby motel. However, their respite is short-lived, as they notice police sirens approaching. Sensing imminent danger, they make a narrow escape, aided by the fortuitous arrival of a passing bus. Learning from their past mistakes, the fugitive couple decides to minimize their risks, meticulously selecting a new hotel where they book all the rooms to avoid detection. Unbeknownst to them, another guest seeks accommodation at the same hotel and inadvertently discovers their presence while conversing with the front desk staff. Meanwhile, timekeepers gather a group of locals near the hotel perimeter, among them a man who recognizes Will and Sylvie. Fortis, the local crime boss, becomes determined to find the couple and exact vengeance for their audacious heists, realizing that an influx of timekeepers to the area has disrupted his criminal operations. The man who spotted the fugitives divulges their location to Fortis, leading to a tense confrontation. Under the cover of darkness, timekeepers storm Will and Sylvie's hotel room. Fortis confronts Will, explaining his grievances before proposing a showdown in a battle of time wrestling, a contest where two opponents attempt to wrest time away from each other. Unbeknownst to Fortis, Will possesses exceptional skills in this arena. Initially, Will appears to yield to Fortis, but at the last moment, he seizes all of Fortis' time for himself, overpowering him. Fortis is dying, and while his partners have not recovered from the shock, Will shoots them all with a concealed gun in his pants. He and Sylvia are on the run again. Time guards led by Raymond find the bodies at the hotel. Will realizes that everything they did to undermine the system was in vain. They distribute time to people and increase interest rates on loans in the bank to take back that time for themselves. Sylvia persuades him to continue, but Will says they need at least 1,000,000 years to break the system. Sylvia knows where to get it, so she returns to her father, surrounded by a crowd of guards. While she talks to Philippe, Will sneaks up unnoticed, threatening them with a weapon. They take Philippe to his apartment and break into the safe. Inside, they find a device with 1,000,000 years on the counter. Will and Sylvia take it and escape to the ghetto. Time guards notice changes on the temporal zone map due to the theft of 1,000,000 years. They try to stop the fugitives on their way to the ghetto, but they fail. Will and Sylvia break through into their own temporal zone. Raymond chases after them, but he is running out of time. In the heat of the pursuit, Raymond fails to collect his daily allowance. In their own temporal zone, Will hands the time device to a familiar girl to deliver it to a charity organization. The girl does as instructed, and the charity begins distributing time to passers-by. Raymond catches up to Will and Sylvia, but in the chaos, they manage to escape. The time guard intercepts them again, but his time is running out, and he dies. Will and Sylvia's time is also running out. Will realizes that he can obtain the guard's daily time and runs to the car at full speed. Sylvia follows him. Will reaches the car first, grabs the time, and rushes to Sylvia to give her half. Just in time, Will saves the girl. The ghetto residents, having received plenty of time, cross temporal zones and head to the wealthy neighborhoods. The remaining time guards understand that their service is meaningless in this chaos and that it needs to be disbanded. Will and Sylvia don't intend to stop there. They decide to dismantle the system. The two of them arrive to rob a new bank and distribute time to those in need. That's all for today. Subscribe and like if you want more videos like this.